Greetings everyone, welcome to Extra Hours, a part of the Office Hours Global network of shows. It's ever increasing. We're actually celebrating 5 years of Office Hours tomorrow, which is cool. Another a show will be on at the same time, a special 5-year anniversary. The dude who started it all, Alex Lindsay, doesn't like looking back very often, and so to get him to talk about the last 5 years will be a short conversation, I'm sure, and then it'll be more about, well, what are we going to do in the next 5 years? So that's tomorrow. But tonight, Extra Hours, we get to kick around some questions that you might have. So say hello to us in the chat if you're in Makana. If you don't know how to get in there, you can go to officehours.global/join, and you'll sign up to an email, and then you get an email that shows you how to get connected to all of these. So tonight we've got a couple of people. First of all, Guy Cochran up in Seattle, Washington. Hello, Guy.
Hey, nice to see you all the way up here in the rainy north wet, as Sky Gleason would say, north wet. It did rain today.
Well, now, Guy, I've got to say it on the show as well. I'm flying all the way to Vegas in a couple of weeks for NAB, and you're on the fence about flying a couple of hours. I think it's about 30 hours or something. I've got to take 3 flights to get there, one of which is 14 hours.
Oh,
So, yeah. So, your little 2 hours is not much to do.
just a little hop, skip, and a jump, huh?
That's right, to be able to meet me in person.
And George is going to be there, and Alex is going to be there for one of the days. A couple other of our buddies are going to be there, and I got this nifty press pass that's been approved, and Keenan's got a battery with a EcoFlow, a cart, and an Ivy, and it's like getting the band back together. I mean,
there's lots of reasons. To complete the panel for today, we have Carl Asmussen in Adelaide as well, just down the hill from me. Hello, Carl.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to tomorrow.
Welcome to the future, everyone. Yes, it is 11:30 a.m. here in Australia, and a debut performance on the panel is George E. Kennedy from Washington, D.C. Hello, George.
Hello, Grant. Hello from Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
It's nice and pollen-filled. Happy to be here. Finally.
Pollen-filled. Yeah, it's good to have you here. So, George, when did you first join Office Hours? You were pretty early on, right?
Yeah, I would say, well, it was definitely during COVID, so
right.
I think COVID, pretty much. Yeah. So
yeah, you weren't. It wasn't. But it was like within months or something, though, right? Of
it was within months.
Or?
I would. Yeah, months it didn't start, and I wasn't one of the first, but definitely, I was there as it ramped up. I was there from the get go and the build of all the different stages. So definitely saw the growth over time, I should say.
Yeah. So what is it that keeps you busy the most? You seem to be a pretty heavy vision guy, right? Is that right?
Yeah. I've always mixed pretty much audio visual and production. A little bit more heavy on the audio visual side right now. So I do a bit of vision mixing, video engineering. And I'm pretty much, like I say, I do a lot of main tent, which comprise of just backstage, whether it's graphics, playback, shading, cameras. But I do a lot more engineering. The only thing I don't really do on the audiovisual side is projection. I don't hate it. I still, as an engineer, I still have to make sure all the routes go to the projection, but I don't like to have to color. Projection is pretty critical when it comes to blending and screens. And I can see, but I don't like to have to shade and color projection, so I stay away from it.
See, some projection guys would say that shading cameras is harder than than blending projectors sometimes, but you don't think so?
No, not at all. Projection is definitely a specialty. I do projection, but when it comes to when the client goes, well, this needs to match or converge. I don't like those converge. They're bad words for me. Converge and color match. Projection. I don't. No, they can have it. I rather shade.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, now there's more LED walls that people are bringing in too, right? Which is nice. You don't have to blend, and you just send the signal in. I mean, they have their own challenges too, right, with LED walls.
Definitely have their own challenges. I mean, you might just get a LED wall, one LED wall or two, but when you start getting in different shapes and sizes, it becomes a little bit. You still have to know what you're doing with the LED walls. It gets a little bit complicated when you have different destinations and configurations. So it's still you still have to know what you're doing on that side. I don't do LED walls either. No, projection on LED walls. No, I stay away from. I just route to them and that's it.
I was going to say, you just want to be upstream from all of that.
That's it. I just push through it and that's it. Yes.
Fair enough. So, working in that kind of, lots of corporate space and sort of AV in general, one of the things that, particularly as we came back out of COVID and then we got back, and so I guess you would travel a bit as well, but also a lot of local work. Is that right?
I do a lot of local work right now, but I do travel. So yes, it's part of the game. What happens with on the AV world, you have corporate or clients that rotate or associations that rotate from city to city as the years go by. So you might have let's say you might have 25 shows in DC this year, and then they'll shift to the West Coast or a different coast, whether it's up in Guy's area too. You'll have the 1 year they're in DC and then they're in Seattle. So it definitely shifts around. And if you work with a particular client or AV company, they might say, you know what, we want to have the same crew. So you'll definitely have the opportunity to fly with certain clients.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about as well is that you've had some success in your health, and I was setting that up with often, particularly being on the road, but some of these long days and the events that we can work on can be really detrimental to our health, right? In that sometimes you have no options for food, and sometimes you're eating out of vending machines, or you're trying to just make something work, and then also just being on the road, and then the travel and all of that often means that we are working long hours, lots of stress, and eating poorly. So that's something that you, I guess, had to turn around, but also you wanted to turn around recently. Is that right?
Yeah. So I posted on LinkedIn last year, and I was pretty transparent about it. January of 2024, went to Phoenix. Was on my way to Phoenix to see my mom, and my vision started blurring. And I had just had my glasses prescription done, so I'm going to the airport all the way to Phoenix, and I just couldn't. I could see, but everything was blurry, and pretty much. And then some other things started happening with his frequent urination. And I know it's medical stuff we're talking about here, but I think it's
good.
crucial that we share with the rest of the community. So it was the vision thing and then the urination bit, right? Got back to DC, went back to my eye doctor and said, hey, I'm having issues seeing. And he said, well, pretty much you're not supposed to because we just did a prescription on you. So let me retest your eyes, but I have an idea what's going on with you, but I'm not your medical doctor. So you more than likely have diabetes. So I went to the VA, which is Veteran Affairs, and the woman, my nurse, took a prick of my finger and she said, "Hey, do you know your blood sugar is 400 and some, which is pretty much coma. Borderline, you could go into a coma when your blood sugar is that high." In any case, so obviously, I discovered that I had diabetes and type 2. So from there, obviously you have to sit down with your doctor and have a conversation about what is it going to take for you to get back to get I like to say you're always gonna be diabetic, but you could actually reverse it. I'm pretty much in that reverse stage now. So my blood sugar was 400 and some. My A1C was 9 point something. A1C right now is 4.5, which is excellent. It's back down. At the time I was weighing 325 pounds. I'm down to 255 now. So
Wow.
pretty much my diet has gotten drastic. I rarely do bread, starches, pasta, the whole 9 yards is out to the window. Um, since January of 2024, I probably had soda once, and that's just tasting it. And then I said, you know what, this is not. So pretty much it's been water for the past year or so. So that's all my liquids I take in. I'll do two protein shakes a day. Um, just keep everything light. Try to put in a lot of veggies. Go ahead.
Is that kind of like meal replacement in a way, like the protein shakes in a way, or not? It's just increasing your protein.
You gotta increase your protein because you're not getting all the things that you used to take in. So it's heavy. Everything is heavy in the proteins. So whether it's garbanzo beans, actually salads, the whole 9 yards. I mean, I don't always get it right now because obviously I'm still working. So you gotta make sure you put like we're on here for the next hour. So I should drink some water, but I'm not gonna do that because I probably have to go to the loo. Which but definitely water intake. And keeping things consistent. I stay away from the sugars. I don't really ingest sugars. I don't take in a lot of sugars anymore because I think the scary part of it is once and you really see and hear. I think I'm gonna back up a little bit. I think what's been not necessarily amazing is that once I became diabetic, I found out there's so many people in our industry that's diabetic. I mean, literally, I have people that I crew with that are also diabetic. So it's definitely something that's going on with a lot of folks. I think what made me went drastic on this is I'm about to turn 56. Getting injuries, whether you get cuts, losing limbs. So I was like, once I had to sit down, I had a heart to heart with my doctor. Is like, man, look, when you start talking about losing limbs and the whole 9 yards, it's real. It's not a joke. So I was like, you know what, I could do without eating all these things. I've lived for 55 years, so I could do without going back and having all the pasta and the whole 9 yards. So pretty much that's where I'm at right now, is just trying to maintain and keep the sugars down, keep still working on getting the weight down. I'm not going to go into too much details beyond what I told you guys, but there's certain things that are helping me to curb and to drop the weight and so forth. And that was important, and I'm grateful for my doctors, obviously, at the VA and the whole 9 yards to put me in that path. The last thing I will say to this bit, you definitely become an advocate, or you have to become an advocate for yourself. There's meds I have to be on, cholesterol meds. I take 2 meds, and you definitely, when they throw the meds at you definitely have to go out there and do your own research and be an advocate for yourself. Don't just have them put you on meds for put you on the med's sake. And I've definitely had like open battles with doctors in the office about what I'm going to take and what I'm not going to take. So, that's about it right now, man. I'm happy to be healthy, and not being here and all that, being here and being there. So all good.
Yeah. And are you noticing anything else, any other advantages? As in, I know that, when I've been eating healthy, I can think clearer and I have more energy and things like that. Are you finding that too?
I'm definitely lighter underfoot, move faster, One of the things too, I don't get to put in as much exercise as I want to, because obviously in production AV we're on the move, so it's hard to do that. So I definitely need to get into putting in the workout. The one thing I will say is when you start dropping this weight on just on protein, it definitely turns your body into jelly. So I'm definitely looking at implementing getting back in the gym and doing some weights. Not necessarily to bulk up again, but to just build the body back to a certain extent, because it does turn your body into jelly.
Yeah, just sort of tighten up a little bit. Yeah, I totally get it. And I think I had just before COVID, I was as light as I'd ever been, and was really enjoying that. Sort of 2019 was great, and COVID hit, and it wasn't just COVID. It was that work got really busy. You know, like for some of us, COVID was actually a very a good busy time for us. And then working late hours and you know, all of that has been pretty hard. The thing that I've realized is that I feel like there's three key areas that for health that we have to get under control. Diet obviously is a huge one. It's like whatever we're putting in, you know, that's giving fuel to our body is really key. Exercise, you know, of some description of, you know, moving our bodies and getting walking and things, and then sleep. Sleep is also really key, and the things that, so I was kind of struggling in all those areas. Actually, there's kind of a fourth one as well, and I think it's stress. And that if we can't get stress under control, then often we're not sleeping as well. We're more likely to make bad decisions about the food that we eat, and we're likely not going to be wanting to be moving either, right? And so the stress can be really difficult, and that's something that I'm still struggling with at the moment, is managing multiple companies and you know, or my involvement in multiple companies, and then still trying to get sleep when there's still work going on. That's one of the difficulties with working for an American company as well, an Australian company, is they're just kind of always on call. There's always something going on, and so I'm trying to not have that as an excuse, but it's something that I'm trying to work on. Guy, I know that you hit the gym pretty hard, and you've got a look that I would love to have. Has that always been the case, or are you just kind of?
You know, I just went for a walk with a buddy, a longtime friend, and we were chatting about this. I was just saying how thankful that we should be, whoever it was, whether it be a coach, a pastor, brother, uncle, that gave us this this image, you know, in our head to go after health early, because as you find later in life, it's a lot more challenging. So I think it was because I met him in karate, and we were both fighters, and so we would go to tournaments and fight, and so I think that Bruce Lee image just kind of got ingrained in our mind, and I just always wanted to stay in shape. And Joe Rogan put up a image on Instagram the other day of this backpack that he has. It's like a Go Ruck or something, where he put a 45-pound plate on it, and somebody in the comments said, "I lost 45 pounds recently," and I just think of how heavy a 45-pound plate is, and walking up a mountain or going for a hike, it's easy when you don't have that extra 45 pounds to just jam up it. And I'm trying to understand like what that would even feel like on joints and knees and feet and all that, because I got lucky that somebody, you know, got me down this martial arts path early on in life. And so now I'm just realizing like how it's a transition for a lot of folks a little bit later on, and how challenging it can be. And I'm trying to have the empathy, because I just hadn't had to go through it. And so it's one of those things where now, you know, you just got to be thankful, but to get after it, I don't know what it is now, what your vision will be to your ideal health, you know, goal. Something's got to push over the edge, because one of my favorite sayings is you either find a way or you'll find an excuse. And I'm 20 minutes a day on the elliptical. I mean, I have a couple other things here that I'll do, like some pull-ups and stuff like that, but I just either hit the road, I go run 2 miles. In fact, some of the guys in office hours will see me coming in. Well, I'm in my sweat gear right now. And I actually have started a new thing where I go to the pool, because I'll hit the sauna. I heard a Finnish study where, like Finland, the country, a sauna 3 times a week will reduce your risk of heart attack by 30%. So I've been hitting the sauna, and that's kind of like running as well, because I have my Apple Watch, and it tells me I'm getting up to about 140 beats per minute, and then I'm like, I gotta get out of here, you know, like so I just came from there, and so it does take 20 minutes on the elliptical or running, and then if you count driving to the gym, it takes me about 10 minutes to get across town and go to the Y for, you know, another 45 minutes or so. So It's either you'll find a way or you'll find an excuse. It's either make it a priority because, I mean, the amount that you're making, whatever you're making, it's like an hour out of your day. If you're not losing a limb, like what's that limb worth? Like it's so. And then the discipline of diet, of course. Yeah, that's a whole nother tangent.
Yeah, I think it as Craig was saying, this business is brutal on health. Yeah, and I've heard we've talked about it a little bit on office hours over the years, and I remember hearing Alex sort of talking about even just when to bring snacks out on a show, right? And it's like you bring snacks out during the morning, everyone hits a lull as the sugar burns off, and you get this low that kind of happens. Ideally, it's like George, I think I saw a photo of yours or something where you had a couple of protein bars or something kind of sitting on the op desk with you. It actually takes planning, doesn't it? Planning ahead to say I'm going to need this and I'm going to need that, and those sorts of things.
Oh, for sure. Like I said, pretty much in the morning it's scrambled eggs, and by 10 o'clock I'm pushing back a protein shake, and then I have some cashews, and not right away, but I have a little Ziploc bag with cashews and a little bit of pistachios and a little bit of plantain chips, no salt. So you snack you have to snack all day long. So I try to do that all day long. I mean, the thing about it is, man, it becomes it's crazy, right? Because it's repetitive, because I'm doing the same thing every day. There's no, I mean, I can have different meals, but whether it's tuna or garbanzos, whatever the case may be, for lunch. So you got to keep everything light during the day. By 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I'm eating dinner. And after that, but it does take discipline. I mean, before, obviously, we all have had times when we have bad habits, like whether it's drinking juices late at night. I just don't do any of that stuff anymore. I'll just open the fridge and just look at that stuff now and just close the fridge and walk away. I mean, my son is not home anymore, so he's at away at college, so there's no reason for me to have bad things in the house.
Right.
So
right.
It takes discipline. It takes planning, for sure.
That does help. Yeah, it's certainly the midnight snacks that can be hard sometimes. Before we move on, Carl, have you got anything to add in the topic of health?
Keep moving. So my job as a photographer keeps me moving. I like to do like a 30-minute walk a day. So I live in a nice area, so it's a nice safe area. So I like to do like a 30, usually around sunset. And it also stops me from editing. So I'll be sitting in front of a screen editing photographs, and like I need to get up and move because I'll be sitting like this for like 8 hours editing. So bit of circulation, bit of podcasts. So me moving. My vice is iced coffee. So too much dairy, too much sugar in the iced coffee, even though it's low sugar iced coffee, but still, that's my vice. But yeah, keep moving. I would suggest, and keep active, as Grant said, with stress. So I'm kind of one of the lucky people. I have a very low stress life. So there's nothing really much in my life that causes me stress too much. So therefore, managing stress is a really good one as well, because stress can actually, people who stress eat, and generally when you stress eat, you're generally eating things that aren't good for you. So this would be another thing as well.
Good one.
I wanted to add one more thing. The moving part's huge. My daughter has a couple dogs, and I'm always walking them almost every single day. I forget that that's a bonus, like especially after a meal, because people don't realize that sometimes what keeps you up is if you had a late night meal, your intestines are just crunching all that stuff down. If you go for a walk, it really gets those intestines and everything moving, and you're not sitting there, because it's like a workout. Adjusting food's like a workout. I remember in the caveman days, we would eat like very sparingly. We didn't have a 7-Eleven on every corner, so we didn't have to eat 5 times a day. That's a myth. I mean, you don't have to continuously eat. So like right now I'm in a fasted state, or I'd have to check my ketones, but I mean, it's one of those things where look up intermittent fasting. There's all kinds of health benefits, but you don't have to have a constant supply of food. It's not true. And fasting's really good for you. It kills a bunch of, George, you want to jump in?
Yeah, George.
Yeah, you made a good point. You mentioned the intestines, and it's only when you get hit with certain things that you really go back to doing the right things. I mean, before I was the guy that, I got massages and did colonics and the whole 9 yards. I knew about the transverse colon and the whole 9 yards. And like Guy mentioned, as you get older, everything slows down. So, eating late at night and that everything is just not breaking down like it should, you know,
Mm.
which means you're going to sleep for 6 hours and on a full stomach sometimes you wake up in the morning, it's still not digest, so you just gotta, I started really now thinking about the whole 9 yards, whether it's, making sure that, good gut health, it's still a process, but, all those things you have to start implementing. Now that I'm about to turn 56, and I mean, the diabetes, you control it, but, I mean, study a lot. I mean, I'm lucky that I have a doctor that, really sat down. We had a big conversation about all the organs that affect each other. It's just not your heart. It's just everything that you have to think about, because they all affect each other. So once you get to that point where you understand the process of your body, which you should, but you don't always pay attention to it. You really get an understanding of what you really need to be doing and what organ can affect the next, and the next. So good points, Guy.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. I've done intermittent fasting. There's one, I've been through some different fads. I'm not saying that intermittent fasting is a fad, because I still do it now, where I try to eat within a 6 hour window. And I've always found that I can skip breakfast easily. And so I'm kind of like 11 o'clock, in the morning, I'm like I'm ready to eat. And then if I have dinner at like 5, I'm super happy, and then I can go through into the next day. And I've done like one meal a day, like OMAD, and a big salad or something I've done before, and I had great success with that as well. My biggest challenge is that when I've tried these things again, like I did a juice fast, I've done over the years as well. I'm not quite sure about that, but it did work very well. Over a couple of weeks, I lost a lot of weight. But this is the thing, some of those things you then put it all back on again and more, can be the thing. And so I'm trying to do the thing that's slow and steady, that hopefully keeps it off and is not just about weight loss, but just general health, and being more healthy. So it's good. It's a good discussion to have, because I think it is a challenge for us there's a bunch of us techs that are sitting like this, messing around with gear all day, and then we'll go on site. I was thinking about this before, George, where you're sort of talking about drinking a heap of water. I mean, there's some shows that you'd just be, that when you sit down in that op chair, you can't leave for hours, like you just cannot. And so, managing your water intake at that point would be, really key. That's a challenge too, right?
Before we move on, what I started doing, what works for me now is, let's say I got a 7 o'clock call, I'm up at 4:30 or maybe 4, and I'm putting away 16 to 20 liters before I leave the house. So I know when I go sit in the engineering chair, I'm not gonna be able to get out. So what I started doing is get up early now and put away like 20 liters. So I know I'm good for at least a good portion of the day.
Hang on,
And by the time I get off work, well, I'm sorry, yes, 20 ounces. Jesus, woo, 20 liters. Yes, 20 ounces. So early morning, 20 ounces. And then, if I don't get it in towards all day long, then I'll put away the rest when I get off work in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So yes, that's
Right.
a trick to get around getting that water in.
That's exactly what I do as well. So my photography, I've got a photography gig this Friday. It's going to be 6 hours long on my feet, non-stop. There's no seats at all. So even if I do want to sit down, there's nowhere to sit. So, but what I would do, you're right. So I'll arrive there around 5 o'clock, about an hour before I have to start. That's when I'll actually arrive on site. But by about between noon and 3 o'clock, I'll do exactly what George says. And I'll probably drink about, 1 or 2 liters, but I'll stop drinking around 3 o'clock. And then I'll only drink at the event, as I need it. But I will load up on water quite a lot, about 3 hours, well, about 2 hours before I actually have to start the event. And it actually helps quite a lot.
That's good. John Wallace, my man's a car. putting away 20 liters. You're taking off half.
It's a jerry can.
A tank. Yeah, that's right. It's a full can. Yeah. Yeah, you wear your kidneys out doing that. You'll get yourself into trouble. Good chat. It's really good, and thank you, George, for sharing. And I think we can benefit a lot from sharing more about that. It's one of those things about we often think about what are the different topics that apart from AV or production or media creation of things, what's the extension of that a bunch of kind of technical thinking people could put their focus on. And I think health is a really good one, because there are a bunch of technical things about it that I think we can sink our teeth into. So
yeah, I'm just gonna, I'm glad that I was able to share this with you guys. We need to have more conversations about it, right? And I always think about NAB also. They do this massive event every year, and none of their panels, zero, is not
right
around health, or just having. You don't have to do, go crazy with it, but at least have the conversation. Nothing's. I mean, I get it. We're individuals and we have to take care of that on our own, but we're an industry at the end of the day. And like I said, there's a lot of us that are working around, that have issues going on. And, obviously you have your own doctors, whatever the case may be, but, it's good if as an industry we're talking about it, because it does affect us as a whole when we're on site, whatever the case may be.
100%. Well, and lots of the things we talk about or healthcare talks about is routine, and good routine, and what we've just mentioned about walking and about when to eat and all these sorts of things. Well, then you get into a production schedule, and you've got no control over, like, suddenly now I've got, like you said, a 7 a.m. call or like there's all these things that you can kind of get thrown out, and they are good excuses. And this is what I have found, as in they're excuses that we can use all the time. I always feel like my cheat days or whatever, I can come up with a good reason every day why today is a good cheat day for whatever, because I have this, or because I had that, or because, whatever it is. Whereas it's like the discipline of it is really is the challenge for me. So go.
Yeah, one other quick thing. I mean, this would be a 16-ounce bottle of water. So I was kind of freaking out when he started saying 20 liters, but it would be a little bit more than this, like 3 more ounces. Well, while I had this up, it reminded me of this. Be careful of the myths out there about salt and things like that, because your body does need electrolytes. So if you're in a production, you're feeling like you're dehydrated. Sometimes it's just you're sweating out your salts. So to replenish them, you want to find something like this. You do your own research, but this is the one that I've settled on. It's called LMNT Element, and you'll see me on productions with packs of these, and I'll be busting them out. But it's basically sodium, potassium, and magnesium. So 1,000 milligrams, 200 milligrams, and 60. And then it's just convenient, And if you have that craving for a soda or something like that, they do have these carbonated versions, which are amazing. They're just kind of pricey. They're like $2.50 or $3 a can. So something to take a look at.
Well, since you brought that up, do you do vitamins and stuff as well? What's your schedule there?
Not as much as I was. I was doing the AG1 thing, but that got a little pricey. So yeah, I've kind of settled on just vitamin D's, just some basic vitamins, nothing crazy. I was doing the On It pack, which was like another $130. I was spending like $260, but I'm like, let's take a break from this stuff. So I'm back to just some basics.
Yeah, I've just been doing. There's a complex vitamin B that I take, and that I always know that I have more sustained energy, I sleep better, things like that. And it's supplements, right? Because if I was eating a full, like a whole food sort of diet, then I probably wouldn't need to be taking supplements. But so yeah, it's forever learning on this stuff. Anyway, we've got a few questions there. We've got a couple of people in the chat asking some questions, but what have we got there, Guy? That's the first question.
Looks like the first one's coming in from Taylor Senderhouse in Cincinnati, Ohio, and he's asking, did you know AWS Elemental MediaConnect adds support for NDI outputs? Will this help with your production?
Guy, what have you been playing around?
We've found ways around this for a long time, so I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to need it. But here's a basic setup. So here's a Zoom room, an NDI bridge, a Viz, and then an NDI discovery server. So with Viz, you could bring in an SRT source, and then the new version, you can bring in Zoom directly. It'll be integrated. And then there's a discovery server. So this is just 4 instances. So what we've added now is an Elemental MediaConnect. You do have to use a large. So that's one thing. It's not the 16 cents medium. I don't know what the price is yet of the large, but I was just setting this up. So you put it in your availability zone so that it goes into wherever your VPC is. And then you can do RTP, SRT as a listener or a caller, which is nice because then you can open up the port on this side. So that is handy. So if you were having to open up ports, sometimes you do not want ports open on your cutting machine. So there is ways around that though. You can say like only allow list from this side or block, and you can block people from coming in anyway. And then the other thing that's new here is this NDI configuration. You turn on this enabled, and you do have to have a discovery server. It does not work without a discovery server. One of the easiest ways to set all this stuff up is Viz has made it super easy. I mean, this is kind of cheating, but if you just go to the marketplace and put on a Viz instance, a bridge instance, and a discovery server instance, they've made all those things of normally having to uncheck privacy settings for cameras and all that stuff. They've made it so dang simple. So if you already have, the tough part is getting the instances typed. So this is a G4DN, which has the graphics card. So as soon as you get your GPU instances, you can fire up these from the marketplace. And once you do, I mean, if the trial ends or whatever, if you just want to try the TriCaster S, you can install vMix, a TriCaster S, Wirecast on this Viz 1A or whatever you want to call it instance. Right. And it's just an app. It's just a Windows server. So this is a very easy way to get into a cloud ecosystem, is to just use Viz's cloud settings, because they're all done for you. Somebody spent a bunch of time figuring it all out. So you don't have to go through the 4 days that we did on office hours showing everybody how to set a vMix setup up. They've made it super easy, and it's getting better too. They just updated the instances yesterday.
Security.
So, Guy,
groups.
is that is the new NDI, is that ingest and out, in and out?
So it's in to MediaConnect, and then you go out from MediaConnect over to your VPC. So you're coming in. So yeah, the nice thing is that you could basically shield your cutting machine or your environment and just have it cross right over. So RTP. So some of these apps will natively ingest. Like you could set up Livestream Studio to be an RTMP server on port 1935. You could do, I think vMix does it as well. I've used SRT. Mini Server has an app that allows you to do it as well. So it just depends on your environment, how you want to protect it in case, somebody's crawling across the internet and he sees your open port or something. How you don't want them messing with your cutting machine during a big show. And that's why we had those redundancies granted, just in case somebody came and whacked our main one, or a bomb hit, or whatever you want to say, flood or volcano. I guess here in Seattle, we're afraid of volcanoes. I live by a couple active ones, so who knows what'll happen. Options.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting though. The fact that is there now. I've got a Elemental link, and I've done a little bit with MediaConnect, and it's good. But there is quite a lot of other services, and so I guess it's picking the right tool for the right job. But it's
I guess on that regard, I don't own an Elemental right now, but if you haven't seen them, they're a little orange box. They used to be $1,000. They might still be about the same price, but basically it's a Amazon branded Videon encoder. They OEM'd it, and it has SDI and HDMI. The nice thing about that is that free ingress into AWS. So the MediaConnect will cost you a couple cents an hour to run it, but ingress is free. So once you flip that Elemental on, you can just leave it, you could set up 5 of these things out of venue. If you have the bandwidth, just let it all pour in, and you could do all your testing and pre-show and everything. And it's just, so maybe that's the future. I mean, there's already SRT built into a lot of cameras. The thing that's coming is NDI bridge built into cameras. That's going to be sweet, because now you just put in the IP address, the port number, and the encryption key. You don't even have a bridge machine locally. You just drop a bunch of cameras and boom. Yeah, we'll see it at NAB.
Yeah,
We're gonna see some.
You just said we will see it at NAB. I'm taking that. You're saying we'll see it, not just online, not online, but actually we will see it with our own eyes.
These shoes need to be, these boots need to be walking, huh?
That means you're coming. It's funny you said that, because when I was looking at the instance type, I was thinking, does an NDI bridge really need to have like such a big instance and the graphics card? I didn't know that it needed a graphics. It
doesn't have to, because at first I had heard that it depends on how many streams are coming in, because with the MSO1, we had one of the guys when we were running a bunch of tests, and I was like, wait, it doesn't have a GPU in it. How's it even working? And he's like, I've got it virtualized. And I was like, well, then that means that you could do multiple. And I've seen it in some of my tests, because now in the new NDI bridge, it actually has, I'll spin it up if somebody will put a question in and give me a second. There's actually a dashboard now that shows you exactly what's going on and which GPU it's using. So there's a lot more with the latest version of 6.01 or 6.1, whatever it is, that gives you all these stats. So, because we bought these, not the Minis Forum MSO1s, there's another one called the Atom Man 7, and it's got a GPU and it's got an Intel Arc. So when we were doing our tests, the guys from Viz were in there and they were saying you need an NVIDIA or you need an Arc card or an Intel IRIX card, but I didn't realize it will hit CPU. So this will be interesting to see, how it pencils out as far as monetarily, if it's cheaper to go SRT, especially if you already have like a Makito or something like that. You just want to use those 4 SRTs up and then kick them over to NDI, and that might be your workflow because it's running at 25 cents instead of having to use an NDI bridge machine at X amount, and people just love the Makitos because they're super, super rock solid stable.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess it depends on what you're doing with the bridge as well, like what it's outputting, because you can sort of just pass the data through, right? Like you could have it.
Oh yeah, you can set it up locally. For a transcode, so it can just go point to point across the subnet, or if that's what you want it to do, you could just join from another part of the network. And some people are using it that way, or they're using it as a decoder for NDI HX3. So like these Zowie boxes, they're NDI HX3, so I have to have a bridge machine locally just to convert this back. So it doesn't take full NDI natively. It has to get a bridge machine in front of it, or I have to have another Zowie box or something that'll convert it. So things will take, like vMix will take it in, but it won't spit it back. All the softwares are full NDI. Basically, anytime that you're outputting NDI from a software, it's going to be full NDI at 120 megabits a second for 1080.
Cool. What's the next question there?
Next one's coming in from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. And he asks, I saw something the other day that Microsoft is going to release a free version of Outlook with ads. Is this for real?
Kyle?
So pretty much what Microsoft's done with 365, so this would include Outlook because it's in the 365 suite. They've kind of followed what I guess you could say that Google probably started with their G Suite of apps, and then Apple followed very quickly with Apple's iWork that's in iCloud. This started way back when iCloud first started. So you don't actually need an Apple computer. So I'll use Apple example here because it'll translate really quickly. So if you purchase an Apple computer, if you give Apple money for a computer, you'll get the iWork suite, which is Pages, Numbers, Keynote, plus everything else. You get Mail and of course everything else, GarageBand and all that. So you get that with the hardware. But if you're on a Windows machine or you're on a Chromebook, which is a really good example here, Chromebook for education, you can, as long as you've got an Apple ID, so an Apple email address, or just need an Apple ID essentially, you can go to iCloud.com, sign in, and then you have access to all of those apps, but they're the online version of the apps. Now, over the last 15 years, 14 years, they have converged very closely, especially with the iOS version of the apps and the desktop version. So there's not too many features that are not found on all 3 versions. So Microsoft has done the same thing now. So Microsoft does have iOS versions of their tools, which do cost money. And they have a subscription-based version, which is, I guess, for desktop, we could call it. But they do have a free online version, which is a web app essentially web browser version, they do have limitations. These are more severe limitations than anything found on, of course, Google's version is no limitation because that's the only version. And then Apple's converging. So Apple makes enough money that they can actually make their web versions very close to the desktop and iOS version. Now, Microsoft have chosen not to do that. They've chosen to have a limited version. So essentially you can open stuff people have given you and kind of edit it and then send it back. That's kind of where they're thinking. It is free. All you need is a Microsoft email login. Now the Teams part, because it is a suite, the Teams part is very limited. So that's extremely limited compared to what you get for the paid version. It's like maybe 1 hour a month. So that's very, very limited. But that's the free version. That's the one stand. And most people, you'd simply be signing into a corporate Teams account generally, if it's not a personal one. You know, it's kind of in a way, Zoom's no different. It's 40-minute limit to a Zoom meeting if you use the free version. But Zoom, at least you can just keep on going. You can shut it down and reopen it again. But yeah, do look at limitations, but it's a web browser version of 365. You store your stuff in one, I guess it's, Microsoft One, their one online version, which you get, again, like Google, you do get a limited amount of free storage and then pay for after that. So essentially it's to draw people in, but the limitations are really there. So you start paying, you start paying your $10 or your $100 a year and just get 365 in general. So it is really a taster, which is a little bit different to Apple, of course. So with Apple, if you just have a Chromebook and no Apple products in your life at all, you do get essentially a very full featured version of all the iWork apps, where Microsoft have chosen not to go that route. They've chosen to give you a limited version. It still works. You can still open, you can still edit, you can still return files, which is good, but it is much bit more limited if you're going to start creating files from scratch.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm enjoying that there's two IT professionals, working full-time in IT, John and John, in the chat. They're like, John Wallace is like, why anyone would use Outlook is beyond me. John Snyder, because it's the most consistent, robust email calendar application, especially if you can't use Gmail. I love
because you have to use it. That's the only thing. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, which is the same for Teams, right? Like,
yeah, your corporation may have to use
so many people are using Teams because it's like it's included. So it makes sense. Next question.
Next one is coming in from Brody Hefner, and he says, I just spent 18 hours going to Atlanta to give a 1-hour talk that could have been a Zoom, but also made great contacts at meals, etc. How can we foster more of those deep, informal connections when meeting or presenting online?
Carl?
So this is something we just haven't figured out yet. So even in, I'll talk from, let's say, a corporate sphere. This may make sense. So if you're your HR department, for instance, you're in a corporate sphere, you live in a cubicle, 40 hours a week. Your interaction with your colleagues is in the break room for 15 minutes a day. So when they need to actually foster this kind of team building, they actually do an off-site team building exercise. And HR departments design these and they pick the locations. The whole point of this is, as humans, we actually function very differently when we get together as a group and there's nothing in between us. So as you said, when you go into these meals and stuff, you found it really good to connect with people. This is kind of just human behavior. And there's no real substitute for this online. So essentially online, we can be 100% efficient as if we were in a cubicle on site. If we choose to be. Of course, people can be lazy, but you can actually get to that functionality of being in a cubicle and being as functional as you would be on-site or off-site via Zoom and via other technology. But that kind of off-site training that corporations do for people who actually do work in like an office space, they choose to go off-site and do this because they know that team building is very hard to do in the workplace when everyone's sitting in their cubicle. So what you're feeling is it's actually a good idea if you can to meet up, 4 times a year, once a month if you can, with these people face to face, because it does, as you found out, it does actually build really good relationships. But if you can't, then you can have extended chats online, but just remember that extended chat is really just a 21st century version of a phone call. And there are certain body language things we miss. There's certain cues we miss, especially when it's multiple people, like we're here together at the moment on Zoom. When there's multiple people, there's cues we get from each other. If someone wants to interrupt and say something, much better in meet space than it is, if we're actually doing it virtually. Now, this is nothing new. We're humans, we're social beings, but try and meet up as much as you can in real space. If you can't, just understand there are limitations, that's all.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's a great question. The thing that Brody, I've been thinking a lot about is conferences, in that we still are we're running conferences the way we have for 50, 70, 80 years, which was based around content. You couldn't access content unless you were on site at a conference, right? It was like, that's how you got the content. Well, the world's changed, right? We can access all of the world's content from home. We can watch it live. We can access a bunch of stuff on YouTube. Like, all of that content is available. So my challenge for people is to be reworking the time that we spend in person together, because we are still wasting so much time consuming content together. We don't need to consume content together. We can talk about the content together. We can ask questions. We can do case studies. We can have panel discussions. We don't need to be sitting and listening to 40-minute presentations back to back, day by day, and then getting to the pub, or, to the bar where we're able actually to have the conversations with people. So I want to see sort of modern in-person events. I completely agree with Carl that I'm not trying to say that online is better for human interaction, but I will argue that online is better for content consumption. So being able to sit in front of a screen to see high resolution content, to be able to fast forward, to slow, to rewind, do all of that stuff is far better than sitting in some theatre falling asleep to the content. So therefore, to your point, Brody, yeah, do your hour presentation online and then have a highly social, highly interactive in-person event organized that might be based as a result or as a in response to the content. So they're the sorts of things, and I think that's the best hybrid if we're talking about that, because we're splitting up the event when we're making content about everything that happens online, and then common unity that happens when we bring people together, and the social and the networking and the comparing notes and all of that heavy interaction. Yeah, let's do that in person. The thing that I'm reminded of is we've been doing this online for 5 years. I've met Carl, but we met online, and we only live half an hour away from each other. But we met online, and for probably a year or two, maybe.
Yeah,
Carl?
I'd say it's about a year at least.
Yeah. Before we actually met in person. And Guy, I'm going to meet in a couple of weeks. Isn't that right, Guy? I'm really trying to get him across the line. The thing that's been good about that is that people can't quite see my waistline, and that's a good thing. And it might be a surprise when people are like, "Oh, he's quite a bit bigger. He's carrying a bit of weight under his chest than I expected." That's all those things that you see when you meet in person. But I think it's a great question, Brody, and I'm super interested in where we go with that. And it's using the best of both worlds. And so the connections that we have made in office hours, which has only been online for most people, have been remarkable. Remarkable. And so
after hours helped a lot of that as well. So after hours in the early days, I think helped with that a lot as well, because we'd have these more informal conversations rather than this more structured conversation we have here and on the Daily Show. Yeah.
I mean, after hours is still going, but is a bit quieter now, and I think maybe we just have to plan some times for people to meet together on there. But we'll see. All right, next question.
Next question's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas asks, the Oberheim TEO-5 has analog VCOs and VCFs, but performs loudness shaping digitally without a VCA. Would you be concerned about tonal degradation with excessive A to D, D to A stages in a mix? And he's got a link here to Sound on Sound review of the Oberheim.
I was going to push this. I was going to push this back, Douglas, to for another panel, but I did think that Carl might give a good answer. So have you got a quick answer, Carl?
Yeah, so essentially this particular synthesizer is doing something that maybe so purists, so there are some synthesizer snobbery out there. So purists make, oh, it's not an analog synth. It never will be an analog synth because the output is always going to be digital and then, or digital convert back to analog again. Essentially at some point in the signal chain, you are going to make your signal digital. It may be in Pro Tools. What they're doing is they're just doing it earlier. So they're just doing it in the synth after the filter. So essentially the stuff that needs to be analog is analog. So they've chosen the oscillator, so the noise generator and the filter to be analog. Then after that, it gets fed into a very high quality analog to digital converter. And then that's where they do the volume shaping because it's very high resolution. So kind of think like 32-bit float, but it's got its own kind of processing going on. So it's not exactly 32-bit float, but we'll call it that just to make it simple. And then it has 4 stages, has one, which is loudness shaping. So essentially volume, and then 3 stages, which is the effects like reverb, delay, all that kind of stuff. And then it goes out USB into your workstation and gets recorded. If you're using live, you can also use the analog out if you choose to, and you can go analog out into a stage box, whatever. So what all they've done here is just move that analog to digital earlier, rather than doing it at an audio interface. They've chosen to just do it in the machine, and by doing it in the machine itself, you actually do get a lot of benefits because you're going to go to the effects process anyway. The effects is always digital, so in any synth you have to convert it to digital, go through the effects, come back analog anyway. They've just chosen to do the VCA part in digital, which is quite clever, and no one's going to complain because this is a sound design machine. So no one's going to complain that actually uses this for actual work because it's designed to create really cool sounds. It's not something you'd find on a stage. It's not a stage keyboard. It's a sound design in a studio keyboard where it's always going to be digital in the end anyway.
Good answer. Thanks, Carl. Next question.
I concur with Carl.
Yeah, that's right. Everything Carl said.
What he said.
Yeah.
Next one's in from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. And he asks, this might be more of a Sunday question, but will Extra Hours be getting a similar email/Discord blast that includes the names of the panelists for the upcoming show?
It's a little bit of a challenge. I mean, the reason that the daily email works well is that it's sort of going out an hour before the show starts, and so for us, while we do actually, the panelists are invite only for Extra Hours. If you're interested in being on the panel, then you can DM me in Discord, and I'll consider it. But what happens though is that regularly people will say, yep, I'm locked in, and then they can't actually make it. There's reasons, and I totally get it. And so it's a little bit harder for us to actually lock in and say who the panelists are, but I'd like to try a little bit more. I think we can use that advertising that happens every day for Extra Hours to be a little bit more interesting. So it's a good challenge. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, I just thought you had to slip the doorman a 20 and,
that's right.
That's how I got in.
Yes,
I want my money back. Next one's in from George Kennedy. Yes. Will SMTE 2110 and NDI compete with each other?
Yeah, totally. Carl?
No. So SMTE 2110 is uncompressed. So it's essentially SDI via a network. Now, there are compressed flavors of this, but as like Blackmagic was showing, they're only compressing it when it goes above 10 gig because they want to use 10 gig infrastructure in their network rather than going to 25. If you take a look at like the Olympics, so OBS, not OBS software, this is the Olympic Broadcasting Service. So this is how all this kind of stuff moves around essentially the Olympic City, because we're talking the entire city here. It's all done by 2110 across the entire city back to OBS's headquarters, and then from there the broadcast partners, NBC for America, take those feeds and then go do what they want, put their own lower thirds on them, off they go, do their own broadcast. At no time does NBC ever have a camera inside the venue, with one exception, which is the meat zone. So they'll have a journalist from NBC at the meet zone at the end of the track. That's the only camera they're allowed to have inside of a venue. And they usually have, and technically they can actually shoot the sport from the meet zone, but those cameras are not allowed to be moved from the meet zone, and the journalist is not allowed to move from the meet zone. And the athletes don't have to talk to them. The athletes can walk straight past them if they choose to. So that's the only NBC camera. I'll use NBC as an example here, but every country kind of has one. That's the only NBC camera in the venue. All the other cameras are run by OBS. OBS is a very large organization. They've done every Olympics since 2010, so the Vancouver Winter Olympics, and they handle everything. So you can go read the PDFs. So whenever a hosting city has to build infrastructure, there's actually a very large PDF document that OBS gives the hosting city and say, these are all the infrastructure we need for telecommunications to run 2110 across your entire city. So you can actually read the document. It's open. So the Olympic Committee actually has this document open. You can read it, and it will tell you all the fiber lines and how many fiber lines they need between each venue. And they do go between venues that you may not think need them. So they have backup paths and all this kind of stuff. It's a very large document, too long to go into here. But yeah, so essentially 2110 is far greater, far more, like we're talking like a citywide and not just like a local area network. So 2110 could actually, well, you could even put 2110 across the switch, which means you could go countrywide, across the Atlantic. So those kind of what we call private Ethernet or private fiber or dark fiber sometimes, those things can carry 2110. And so we're talking like a much bigger infrastructure outlay, but it's essentially the uncompressed nature. So NDI was made by a company to get feeds into their TriCaster. Pretty much that's what it was. And they used at the beginning MPEG-2, that's NDI. So NDI, what they call full bandwidth, high bandwidth, that's MPEG-2. And then they have HX 1, 2, and 3, which is flavors of H.264 and H.265 across those three standards. Pretty much that's all it is. They're using known standards. And the reason they used MPEG-2 was because when they launched the original NDI was when MPEG-2's patents ran out, which meant that they could actually use this technology for free. So they were wrapping their own proprietary technology, which was timing and stuff that they do, around something that was now free, because the NAB where they launched it and it kind of became available to everyone, that was like the exact month that all the patents ran out on MPEG-2. So that's why NDI originally was MPEG-2, and now licensing fees are relatively low for MPEG-4, hence HX, and MPEG-5 is relatively low as well now. So they can, even though they charge you for it, or it's a little bit extra cost to add it to a camera, or it's already in a camera, those small fees are paid for that cover, NDI, which is very, very good technology to use. Very heavily used in security as well. So security cameras use NDI as well, not just in what we do for video production. So it's very useful technology. A little bit different fish, kind of compared to SDI. SDI wouldn't necessarily, SDI via 2110, sorry. So 2110, while you may use it, you could use it in security cameras, not really necessary. Where I'd see SDI used, where I think NDI was used and now has been transferred to 2110, which would be the cameras you see like for SpaceX or NASA around the pad. So the official engineering cameras, their feeds back could have been NDI in the past, I believe. And now they've gone infrastructure and they've got fiber and everything. Now they can now they have cameras that can do 2110 straight out of the camera without having a box. And so my guess is a lot of those cameras are now that we see on SpaceX and NASA launches from Kennedy and from Brownsville. We actually see those feeds now of 2110. And if you actually watch enough of these feeds, you'll see the gremlins. So a lot of the green Hulk gremlins are now disappeared. So we used to see those a lot in SpaceX launches. You see the green flash. We don't see any green flashes anymore. So we believe they've gone over to 2110 now.
Interesting. George, what do you think yourself about?
I've been seeing, obviously there's a few things coming up at NAB. I think it's pretty much going to come. They're trying to get it to mainstream, and there's a couple of events at NAB about using it in live events, meaning corporate. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Obviously, NDI has got a head start over COVID and it's been maturing for a couple of years now. So it's going to be interesting to see what's announced at NAB as far as surrounding 2110. So just curious.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I kind of feel like 2110 is the commercial, system, and that NDI is kind of a prosumer system, right? Like it is used in pro for sure, but it just does, like as John Wallace is saying, it's just different apples and oranges, I guess. Guy, what do you think? You've used them both a bit, haven't you?
Yeah, the other contender here is Dante AV. So you know, a lot of us don't need the heavy iron of SMTE 2110, and we'll see what some of the workflows with Blackmagic and their version with their Ethernet switch as more people get into it. This is where I would love in after hours for our community to somehow pitch some money in the hat, and then we just have like this gear set up to where we can just have a powwow on a Saturday or whatever and just all plug it in, go to interfaces and play with it. Cause I don't want to buy this stuff, you know, and just return it or sell it for a loss. I want to learn it though. I want to see where the pitfalls are, because on the video engineering Reddit, there was some people saying that there's all this finger pointing about NMOS. So some of this stuff's going to get super complicated as far as how sources are discovered. One of the vendors, Keycode Media, has done a lot of videos on their YouTube channel of news stations that have switched over. And one of the biggest benefits is cable, not having all those SDI runs. So they were saying when they ripped out all that SDI cable and replaced it with 2110 fiber, that the amount of cable shrank by like it went to a tenth of what it was. So one of the big things is like these trucks that are going down the road now, they don't have to carry nearly as much copper because 2110, you just got so many more runs that you can do over one fiber cable. So it'll be interesting to see how that in that manner, because you know some people on their TriCasters are doing 100 NDI sources, which is pretty damn impressive. Excuse my language, but they're doing a lot. I've seen some of these guys' discovery servers. They pop them open. I'm like, wow, you know, between all the cameras, replay, and all the machines, and they're doing KVM as well. You can get a lot of sources floating over a 10 gig network.
Interesting times. In NAB will be interesting to see, like as you said, George, like 2110. And I think you just won't get the feeling of NAB online unless you are there. You're really going to have to be there and touch the things, Guy. So
just touch them. Yeah, the shiny object.
That's
yeah,
right.
before the show, Grant was saying that I'm just gonna go down the aisles and I'm just gonna not stop. I'm just gonna give you guys a taste. I'm like, there's no way you cannot just go down the aisles and not stop. I mean, it's the ADHD kicks in. You're like, squirrel, shiny object, like over there.
What's
You
that?
won't even make it down one aisle.
He's absolutely right. I've got all these massive plans right now to get, because I'm only there for two actual show days. So I have these massive plans to get to every booth in a day and a half, but it's not going to happen because I'm going to see folks. You're going to get distracted. You're going to stop and start talking. Before you know it, it's going to be over. You'll never make it.
Oh, we'll see. The challenge is there. We'll see what happens. All right, we've got to the end. We've gone a little bit over. What some content recommendations now, Guy? What have you got?
All right, so my one's going to turn into 3, but it's really 1.
Sneaky.
But, okay, so it starts with 1. So the 1 is Nigel put up a Substack and it says my top 5 books everyone should read. In the list is the one that I'm going to show you. It is called Thinking in Bets, Making Smart Decisions When You Don't Have All the Facts by Annie Duke. And I want to show you something of how I got it. So I don't know if you have this in Australia or other parts of the world, but this is my phone. There's an app where you could get books for free from the library. So, and sometimes they're not available, but somebody else loans them. But basically, it's called Libby. So once you have the Libby app, you can go in there and you could search for any book like that Annie Duke book, and it just showed up today. So now I can listen to this for free and then return it when I'm done. But it's very cool. So 3 things: the book Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke, the app Libby, and then register with your local library, and then also check out Nigel DeSalle's Substack. So 3 in 1. How do you like it now?
I have to go back over this recording just to get the notes. That's good. Good one.
There you go.
Carl, what have you got?
So my one is a bit of a simple one. It's a YouTube channel, but it's going to be PBS. So PBS officially have different YouTube channels depending on which PBS station. So they will make documentaries. So there's PBS America, and this is what I'm talking about. Is the documentaries that are found on PBS. So there's PBS America, which is a good one to go for documentaries, and these are the high quality documentaries that PBS makes and has made for almost 50 years now. But also there's local stations, and these local PBS stations have their own YouTube channels. And so any documentary they do on like local stuff, let's say like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, you find a documentary on that and how Henry Ford tried to develop that. You'll find local documentaries, and that'll be found in the Michigan PBS, or essentially the Midwest PBS YouTube channel. So you do have to fish around to the different PBS YouTube channels, but you'll find all these very high quality documentaries that PBS has made over the years, and even some by Ken Burns. So some of the Ken Burns stuff over the past years goes up and comes down off PBS depending if they're showing it. So you'll see all these great documentaries, and now of course you will find other people who will put them up on other channels. Best documentaries or great documentaries online, whatever. So you will find other non-official PBS channels on YouTube that will have this. But check out the PBS America and other affiliated PBS YouTube channels for their long form, 1 to 1.5 hour documentary series they have, which you won't really find anywhere else, because they may be on the PBS portal if you go to the website, but they're usually time limited, so they're only allowed to go up for a certain amount of time. Whereas YouTube, it's kind of sticky, so that stuff will stay there. So it's pretty good.
Good one. George, what have you got for us?
Well, I don't know. I'm just right now rediscovering a lot of music. I'm a little stuck on Bob right now. So Bob Marley, of course. I'm just
Nice.
revisiting his catalog from the beginning to now. I'm also digging a lot of there's this reggae artist out of Jamaica, also Protege, that's really into a lot of dub. So I'm digging a lot of the music side right now. I'm trying to stay away from the media and so forth. So music right now is where it's at for me.
That's good. What's a good go-to Bob Marley album as kind of a good introduction?
Right now, Exodus.
Okay.
Exodus.
Nice.
I mean, he's got a vast catalog, but Exodus comes to mind.
Yeah. Right. Good one. My recommendation is for I saw along the music line is I watched this on my Vision Pro on a plane. I enjoyed this. Was If These Walls Could Sing. It's an Abbey Road. It's all about Abbey Road recording studio. It was just cool. It was just cool. It's like, here's a great space. Recording studios, and just some of the artists that have been there. Of course, the Beatles. It was basically their home for quite some time. They had run of the place, and so yeah, it was just really cool hearing about that and some of the history of that place.
So that particular series is made by Paul McCartney's daughter as well. She's a filmmaker, so this is her thing. But yeah, so Mary McCartney is the person who made it.
Oh, there you go. Extra intel there. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. I think it's worth a look. It's on Disney Plus. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks, George, for joining us. Hopefully we'll be able to have you again, and I look forward to meeting you in person in a couple of weeks. And Guy, look forward to meeting you in person. We're really trying to make it happen.
Gotta go look at those flights again.
Yeah, you do. You could just about drive there, dude. Like that's just a tease for me.
It's just a hop, skip, and a jump, right?
That's right, exactly. Special thanks to Taylor, Alan, Peter, and Jeff, 1F Jeff, who have made it work tonight. And they were playing around with what's it called? Luma Audio? Is that what it was? Luma Audio? Llama, yeah. Thank you. Making that some heavy lifting on some audio, playing around with that. So, and that's actually a big part of what Extra Hours is about, is an opportunity for us we're sort of creating a bit of a conversation which enables a whole bunch of testing and playing around, because you never learn as much as when you're actually doing a show. It's very hard to do testing unless it's a real show, and so it's one of the key reasons that we're doing this, is playing around with that and vector and cloud production, which is all fun. So thank you for joining us. Join us tomorrow at 7 a.m. Is the daily show. Ask all your questions then. But also, again, 6 o'clock tomorrow night is a 5-year anniversary of office hours. And so it'll be a little bit of the a look back and a look forward into the future as well. So join us then. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.